No one in the room imagined that a quiet evening at the city's most exclusive restaurant would turn into a night people would never forget. A proud waiter thought he could humiliate a man who didn't fit in, but what he didn't know was that the stranger was John Cena. And when the truth came out, the entire restaurant was left speechless. Stay with us, because what happens inside L'Amour Prime isn't just about food or status, it's about respect, pride, and a lesson this waiter will never forget. If you enjoy this story, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe, because tomorrow we'll bring you an even more powerful story just for you. And tell us in the comments below, where are you watching from? When John Cena walks into the ultra-exclusive L'Amour in faded jeans and scuffed boots, smug waiter Julian Voss thinks he's just another nobody to kick out. But what starts as a clash of class explodes into a jaw-dropping showdown that flips the tables, literally revealing John Cena's true power and teaching a lesson in kindness that Julian never saw coming. Stick around to see how one night changes everything, and drop AC in the comments if you're Team John Cena. Don't forget to hit subscribe and ring that bell for more epic stories. John Cena pushed through L'Amour's heavy glass doors, his boots tapping a quiet rhythm against the floor. His leather jacket hung loose, creased from years of wear, and his jeans carried the faint fade of countless washes. He didn't glance around or adjust his posture. No nervous tics or eager smiles. He just walked straight to the host's stand, hands in his pockets like he belonged. Julian Voss spotted him instantly. From behind the polished podium, the head waiter sized John Cena up with a flick of his hazel eyes. Julian's black uniform was crisp, his tie knotted with military precision, and his slicked-back hair gleamed under the lights. He had been at L'Amour for 6 years, climbing from busboy to gatekeeper of Calva's elite dining scene. To him, every guest was a puzzle: brands, posture, the weight of their wallet. And John Cena didn't fit. "Evening, sir," Julian said, his voice smooth as silk, but sharp at the edges. He leaned forward slightly, arms crossed. "You got a reservation?" John Cena tilted his head, dark eyes meeting Julian's without a flinch. "No," he said, voice low and steady. "I'm here for dinner." "Got a table?" Julian's lips twitched into a smirk. He tapped a pen against the reservation tablet, the sound a deliberate little drum roll. "L'Amour is pretty exclusive," he said, stretching the words for effect. "We cater to a specific crowd. You sure you're in the right place?" John Cena didn't blink. "Unless you're saying I'm not welcome," he replied, calm but firm. "I'd say I'm exactly where I want to be." The air between them tightened. Julian's smirk faltered for half a second. He wasn't used to pushback this quiet, this direct. He recovered fast, chuckling like it was all a game. "Oh, you're welcome," he said, voice dripping with fake warmth. "But we've got standards. Presentation matters here." His gaze slid over John Cena's jacket, lingering on the scuffs of his boots. "You look more like you're headed to a dive bar." John Cena's mouth curved into a small, knowing smile. "Standards, huh?" he said, his tone cool but edged. "I always thought standards were about how you treat people, not how much their clothes cost." Julian's jaw tightened, the faint twitch of muscle betraying his irritation. He tugged at his tie with a sharp adjustment and let out a laugh that was more mockery than humor. "Respect," he repeated coldly. "This isn't some roadside diner. This is L'Amour. Here, presentation is everything. We host CEOs, celebrities, people with real influence. And you," his gaze swept deliberately over John Cena's worn jacket and boots, "you look like you belong in a backstreet bar, not here." John Cena didn't flinch. His expression remained calm, but his voice carried weight. "Funny," he said evenly. "I thought respect came from how you treat people, not the cost of their shoes." Julian's smirk deepened, though his eyes flashed. He stepped out from behind the podium, planting himself directly in John Cena's path. His voice dropped into a sneer. "Here's some free advice. If you're going to play tough guy, try doing it somewhere the cheapest steak isn't $400. You're out of your league." John Cena leaned in slightly, just enough to close the distance. His tone dropped to steel. "And you're out of line. I asked for a table, not your judgment. Can you handle that, or do I need to speak to someone who can?" The tension between them grew sharp, drawing a hush from nearby diners. A young waitress, barely a month into her job, clutched a stack of menus at her chest. Her voice came out timid, almost apologetic. Maybe he's just here to eat. Julian turned his head and silenced her with a glare so cold it froze her in place. "People like him don't eat here," he said, loud enough for John Cena to hear. Straightening his posture, he smoothed his tie with a flourish. "They gawk, they waste time, but they don't belong." John Cena studied him quietly, then shrugged. His voice was calm, unwavering. "Neither," he said. "I'm staying. Table for one." Julian's patience snapped. His face flushed crimson as he snatched a menu from the waitress's stack and shoved it forward. "Fine," he spat. "You want to humiliate yourself? Be my guest." He spun on his heel and marched toward the back of the restaurant, each step sharp and clipped. John Cena followed slowly, calm and deliberate, his silent presence heavier than Julian's display of authority. Julian didn't know it yet, but he had just struck the match on a fire that would consume the entire evening. Julian stormed through the glittering dining hall, his polished shoes striking the marble floor in sharp, angry clicks. He didn't look back, but every step burned with irritation. This wasn't how things were supposed to go. He was the one who decided who belonged, not some stranger in worn jeans and a leather jacket. He stopped abruptly at a small table shoved against the wall beside the kitchen doors, the noisiest, hottest corner of the restaurant, a punishment seat reserved for guests Julian wanted to disappear. With a sharp scrape, he yanked out the chair and slammed a menu down on the table. "Here you go," he said sarcastically. "Best seat in the house, for someone like you." John Cena glanced at the spot, then back at Julian. His expression didn't flicker with anger or shame. Instead, his voice came steady, almost amused. "Thanks," he said simply, sliding into the chair. "Looks cozy." Julian's smirk twisted. Cozy? The man was mocking him. He leaned down, lowering his voice so only John Cena could hear. "Enjoy your dinner, if you can afford it." Straightening, he turned sharply on his heel, muttering under his breath as he stalked away. "Let's see how long you last." Across the room, the young waitress, Leia, watched nervously, her fingers twisting around the hem of her apron. She had seen Julian play this game before, belittling anyone who didn't fit into his polished world. But something about John Cena felt different. He didn't flinch, didn't shrink. He just sat calmly, flipping open the menu like he belonged. Julian returned to the host's stand with a smug grin, leaning toward Leia. "5 minutes," he whispered. "He'll bolt when he sees the prices." Leia bit her lip, but said nothing. A small part of her hoped Julian was wrong. Minutes passed. John Cena stayed, studying the menu line by line, as if he had all the time in the world. No hesitation. No fear. Just calm. Julian's smirk began to fade. Grabbing a pitcher of water, he strode toward the table, his mind buzzing with irritation. If the man wouldn't leave on his own, Julian would help him along. He stopped at John Cena's table, his voice coated in false sweetness. "Thirsty?" he asked, tilting the pitcher. Cold water spilled over the edge, splashing across John Cena's jeans. A sharp gasp came from a nearby table. The icy bite of water hit John Cena's legs, but he didn't flinch. He calmly dabbed at the spill with his napkin, then looked up at Julian with steady eyes. "No harm done," John Cena said evenly. "Accidents happen." He paused, his voice cutting like a blade. "Though, I'm starting to think this wasn't one." Julian's smirk twitched. The stranger had seen straight through him. And for the first time that night, it stung. Julian's smirk returned, though thinner this time, his pride wounded by John Cena's calm response. He leaned closer, his tone sharp and venomous. "Oh, it was no accident," he said smoothly. "But let's be real, you don't belong here. Save yourself the trouble and go." John Cena set the napkin down carefully, his hand steady. He leaned forward, his voice low but heavy with authority. "I'm just here to eat," he said. "You're the one turning this into a circus. You're embarrassing yourself, not me." The words hit like a punch. Julian's face flushed hot, his fists tightening at his sides. He wanted John Cena to snap, to explode, to give him a reason to throw him out. But instead, John Cena's restraint made Julian look smaller by the second. From the edge of the dining floor, Leia stepped forward hesitantly. "Julian," she whispered, her voice soft but pleading. "Maybe let it go. He's not bothering anyone." Julian snapped his head toward her, fury in his eyes. "Mind your business," he barked. His attention snapped back to John Cena, his voice dropping into a hiss. "This is my restaurant. I protect its reputation. And you, sitting here in that junkyard outfit, soaking wet, you're bad for business. Leave or I'll call security." The restaurant buzzed with whispers, eyes darting toward the tense corner. Forks paused midair, wine glasses hovered untasted. All attention shifted to the clash no one could ignore. John Cena leaned back in his chair, utterly unshaken. His hands rested easily on the table as his voice came calm, almost amused. "Security, huh? That's your big move?" His gaze pierced through Julian. "Tell me, what exactly makes you so sure I don't belong? The boots? The jacket? Or just the fact that I won't bow to you?" Julian's breath hitched. For a moment, his confidence cracked under the weight of John Cena's words. His lips parted, searching for a retort, but nothing came. Around them, the quiet storm built, murmurs, sidelong glances, a room full of witnesses waiting for what came next. And in that moment, Julian realized he was no longer in control. Julian stood stiff, his chest rising and falling as the restaurant buzzed with hushed voices. He had pushed this too far, but pride wouldn't let him back down. His voice sharpened as he leaned in. "You think you're smart? Smart doesn't pay for a $400 steak. Get up. Get out. Don't waste my time." Before John Cena could respond, a chair scraped loudly against the floor. An older gentleman in a tailored suit, gray hair combed neatly back, set his glass down and turned his sharp eyes toward the scene. The tension rippled further through the room. But Julian didn't notice. His rage drowned everything else out. He was seconds away from calling security when John Cena moved. Calmly, deliberately, he reached into his jacket pocket. For a split second, Julian's heart skipped. Was he pulling out a phone? Something worse? Instead, John Cena drew out a sleek black card. Its gold insignia caught the light. The murmurs in the dining hall surged. Everyone recognized it. This wasn't just a credit card. It was a symbol of wealth, power, and status far beyond Julian's reach. Julian's smirk faltered. His lips parted, words failing him for the first time that night. And then heels clicked sharply across the floor. Elena Torres, Lumra's general manager, appeared in an instant. Her dark hair was tied back, her expression pale but professional. She stopped beside John Cena's table, her voice tight with urgency. "My deepest apologies, John Cena," she said firmly. "Had we known you would be dining with us tonight, we would have prepared properly." The words slammed into Julian like a freight train. John Cena. His blood ran cold, his confidence evaporating in an instant. Around the room, whispers grew louder, every guest turning to stare. The older man in the suit smirked faintly, as if he had seen this twist coming all along. John Cena slipped the card back into his jacket pocket, calm as ever. His voice came steady, quiet, but unshakable. "No need for that," he said. "I'd rather pay for my meal." But first, his eyes lifted to Julian, sharp and unyielding. "We've got some business to settle." Julian's knees weakened. The room he had once controlled was now a stage where he stood humiliated. And John Cena had just taken center spotlight. Julian swallowed hard, his pride collapsing under the weight of whispers spreading through the restaurant. His hands trembled as he forced himself to stand tall. But before he could speak, John Cena leaned back casually in his chair, his calm gaze locked on Julian. "I've invited some guests," John Cena said evenly. "They'll be here soon. People you might not think belong here, Julian. Your job is simple: serve them right. Treat them like they belong, the way every person deserves. Do that for an hour and you keep your job. Fail and you're finished." The words struck Julian like a hammer. His throat tightened. He wanted to argue, but Elena Torres, the general manager, stepped closer, her voice clipped and firm. "You heard John Cena," she said. "Get ready." Julian's mouth went dry. His pride screamed against it, but his fear of losing everything left him numb. He gave a stiff nod and returned to the host's stand, sweat trickling down his back. 10 minutes later, the restaurant doors swung open. 6 people stepped in, not dressed in designer suits or glittering gowns, but in ordinary clothes. A big man in a faded flannel shirt. A thin man in a hoodie with a scruffy beard. A woman in a denim jacket, her hands calloused from hard work. 3 others followed, casual and out of place among the polished crowd. The diners turned their heads. Eyes narrowed. Murmurs spread like wildfire. To them, these newcomers looked like intruders. Julian's chest tightened as he forced a strained smile. "Welcome to Lumera," he said tightly. "Follow me." He led them through the room, feeling the judgmental stares of the elite crowd pressing in on him. He pulled out chairs at a center table, not the corner this time, but his movements were stiff, jerky, filled with resentment. The woman in denim gave him a quiet look, but said nothing. The man in flannel grinned warmly and said, "Nice place." Julian muttered under his breath, forcing menus into their hands. "Take your time." From across the room, John Cena watched silently, his dark eyes unyielding. Julian could feel the weight of that gaze pressing down on him. This wasn't just dinner anymore. This was judgment. And Julian knew, deep down, he was already losing. Julian stood by the newcomer's table, his knuckles white as he gripped his notepad. The 6 guests John Cena had invited flipped through menus, their voices calm and steady. The man in the hoodie leaned back with a grin. "I'll take the foie gras rossini," he said casually. "That's the one with truffle sauce and wagyu, right?" Julian froze. That dish cost $350. His pen stalled midair. Are you sure?" he stammered. "That's expensive." The man's grin didn't fade. "Yeah, I heard you." "Write it down." Julian's face burned. He forced a bitter laugh. "Look, maybe you should stick to the salad. Cheaper, easier." The table went silent. The denim-clad woman set her menu down slowly, her eyes fixed on Julian like he had slapped her. The flannel man's jaw tightened, though he said nothing. Before Julian could recover, a quiet voice broke the tension. John Cena had risen from his seat, his calm stride carrying him to the table. The entire restaurant hushed. Forks and glasses paused midair. "Problem, Julian?" John Cena asked softly, but his voice cut through like steel. Julian's throat went dry. "No, They can order what they want," John Cena said firmly. "In fact, dinner's on me tonight." He turned to the group, his voice softening. "Go ahead, whatever you like." The hoodie man leaned forward, his grin sharper now. "By the way," he said, his voice carrying across the hall, "you might want to watch who you talk down to. I'm Nathan Cole, restaurant critic for Gourmet Insider." The name hit Julian like a sledgehammer. Nathan Cole could ruin a restaurant with a single review. And Julian had just insulted him. The denim woman spoke next, steady and unflinching. "I'm Sarah Clean. I used to cook here. Back when Lamora was just a dream. Guess I don't belong anymore, huh? The flannel man leaned forward. Tom Harris. I fund places like this. Philanthropy, not flash. Julian's stomach dropped. These weren't nobodies. They were giants. And he had treated them like dirt. John Cena stood silently, letting the weight of it sink in. Julian's knees trembled. His arrogance had collapsed. Finally, John Cena spoke. I gave you a chance. Treat people right. You didn't. Now you have a choice. His eyes locked on Julian. Work at my charity kitchen for a month. Serve those you think don't belong. Learn what respect really means. Do it, and maybe you'll earn your place back. Refuse, and you're done here. Julian's pride screamed no. His hands shook, his throat tight. At last, he choked out the words. I can't. He dropped his notepad with a thud and stormed out into the night, shame burning in his chest. Inside, John Cena turned to Nathan Cole. Sorry about that, he said quietly. Please, enjoy your meal. The guest smiled faintly. The critic scribbled notes. The room eased, the storm passing. Julian had walked away. But the lesson remained. In John Cena's world, respect wasn't bought, it was given.